maybe just, introduce myself a little bit and explain why I think, I'm here today and why I'm trying to really profile these ladies and women in science and young aspiring leaders in business. And I think, it's useful for me to maybe share a bit of myself. So, as I always tell my friends and people who know me, I'm a mother first and foremost. I had my son when I was 17, so for more than half my life I've been a mother. For 24 years. It's been a journey throughout corporate, studying, climbing the corporate ladder as a mom, a single mom. And, as we know, the workplace isn't necessarily over the last 20 years been set up to really recognize and support women and women in the workplace, women in society, our role and our impact. So for me, this is a very personal cause, and that's why, I'd like to be here today. I think just from a career perspective, I am a chartered accountant by profession. I qualified a long time ago at Deloitte and then spent some time at Deloitte in the UK, another couple of years, maybe 6 years at KPMG. So the first half of my career was in professional services. The last almost decade has been in pharma, the pharma industry, and I joined Cipla and did a host of roles from finance through strategy roles, to commercial P&L. And I think in the strategy portion of my time in pharma, I got to really engage across Africa, India, work with global access business for HIV and malaria, really high disease profile areas. And it really, it's my passion. So I think, my latest role is Chief Commercial Officer for BioVac, vaccines in South Africa, and we're looking to grow beyond South Africa, and not just with vaccines, but beyond vaccines to other biologics. So I think in terms of science, in terms of business, in terms of being a woman, these are my passion areas and this is what I know. So very happy to be here with the ladies today. We've got 3 ladies joining us, but I just need to check if we've got Vimbai on the line. No. I can see the 2 ladies on the side saying, oh, we're going to have to speak some more. Okay, so for now, I think, I just want to introduce Dr. Charlotte Masarumule. She is the chief scientist at Mintech. And then we also have Dr. Batabile Ramalapa, senior researcher at CSIR, so the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. We also had Dr. Vimbai Samyukange, from Zimbabwe, and was pretty keen to also have her on board. You know what really profiles these young ladies is they've gone out, right? They've gone out, they've traveled, they've, really excelled academically across the world, across universities, and they've come back to Africa because this is their passion. They want to continue to give back to Africa, and you'll hear from them themselves in terms of what their individual areas of expertise are. But ladies, let me invite you, maybe we'll start with you, Charlotte, to tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey so far, some of the, and don't forget the highlights and the achievements. So Charlotte, over to you.
Thank you so much, Fire. Let me start by thanking the conference organizers for giving me the opportunity to be part of this gathering and to interact with amazing people such as all of you in the audience and my fellow panelists. So I'm Charlotte Masarumule. I'm a chief scientist at Mintech within what is called the health platform, and my job is cross-functional, so I take care of activities ranging from concept development, technical R&D, to some QC, QA aspects, all the way through to right before we hand over to manufacturing. So on the technical background, my passion is really more on biomarker discovery and development using genomic tools, and for the purpose of developing biomarkers for diagnostics, as well as druggable targets. And on the other side, I'm really passionate about developing rapid point-of-care diagnostics for diseases of African importance. So a little bit about my journey. I'll start at the beginning. So our brief for this session was that we are to get a little bit personal, so as to inspire young and upcoming scientists, especially women scientists. So I'm born and raised in Limpopo, I grew up in a small village called Masarumule. So thanks to Google Maps, people can now find us. Both my parents passed away when I was, both my parents passed away before I turned 8. So my mother passed away when I was a year old, and my dad when I was 7. I grew up in a rural village, so those two factors already come with their own challenges, but we pushed on through. So fast forward to, well, before I fast forward, so I grew up in an environment where a lot of the things that I said that I wanted to the people around me were considered to be, I'll quote Gasperi, Jamahoa, which translates to, that's for white people. So I had to fight through all of that to get to where I am. Fast forward to university. So I did all of my schooling in Masarumule, and I went to Pretoria, University of Pretoria for undergrad. I did my BSc in medical sciences, went to Wits for BSc in medical cell biology, for BSc honors in medical cell biology, pardon me. Then joined the CSR as an intern, working in the Aptima Technology Group. We were focusing on developing point-of-care diagnostics for HIV and TB. I was on the TB side. And I was then offered a master's studentship to pursue my master's with the University of Cape Town while based at the CSR for my research. And after my master's, I worked as a researcher for about a year or so at the CSR before starting my PhD studies at the University of Cambridge. So I was funded by the Cambridge Commonwealth Trust and was co-funded by the CSR for one of the 4 years of the PhD. So I was really fortunate. Went to Cambridge, pursued a PhD looking at host-directed therapeutics for TB, so understanding host immunity and genetic contribution to susceptibility to disease, and which targets we can identify using genomic approaches, and then repurposing drugs that are already clinically tested to try and activate immune response. So that was my focus. After that, that was my PhD and postdoc. I was then recruited to a biotech startup company, Hutano Diagnostics, which was incubated at the Oxford University Bioescalator. I was recruited as a consulting principal scientist for them to help them develop Aptima-based lateral flow diagnostics for infectious diseases. We started with an Ebola lateral flow, and then when COVID hit, we pivoted quickly towards that. I then moved from Hutano back to South Africa, and I found myself at Mintech in the health platform where, as I mentioned, I deal in biomarker discovery and development as well as rapid diagnostics. So career highlights. Okay, so one of the biggest ones was in 2012. I was awarded the South African Women in Science Award in the master's category. And what made it special, particularly special for me, was that it was awarded by the then minister, who was female, Naledi Pandor. Oh. So that was a pretty special moment for me. The other special moment was when I got to go to the Licensing Executive Society Graduate International Business Plan Competition Finals. This was in Seattle. It's particularly special because at the time I didn't consider myself particularly enterprising or as an entrepreneur, even though I had started a social enterprise in my undergrad, but that's another story. So it was really special to be honored in that way, because we were competing with MBAs from Stanford and all these elite universities. So to be in that space and be considered an entrepreneur, and for our business plan to be top 4 in the world in that space, that was pretty amazing. And of course, when I got the Cambridge Commonwealth Trust opportunity, which funded me to go to the University of Cambridge, which was a childhood dream. This is something that I had discussed with my dad when I was 6, 7. It was either Oxford or Cambridge at some point. It was never a PhD aspiration necessarily, but to at least experience the halls of Cambridge or Oxford in some way. And one of the more recent ones is actually getting to defend my thesis and feeling like the examiners we're all on the same page, we're on one accord, and and they agree that they can put the stamp to say, okay, you've done this, you know what you're doing in this space, you've defended it well, and we can send you out into the world. And some other highlights. So when I was doing my master's at the CSR, we got the work that I was involved in. We yielded a patent where I was a co-inventor. So that was a pretty big deal at that early stage in my career. But as to what we did with the patent, we will discuss that some other time. So those are some of the highlights that I can think of.
Wow, I mean that's pretty amazing, right? Let's just remember, guys, because we're going to come back, and I really do hope we can get our other panelist on the line, but then I'll just tell you a few snippets about her as well. But just remember now Cambridge and Oxford, right? I'm going to tell you and circle the whole thing at the end. But Tabile, you want to take us through your journey?
Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Farah, and thank you to the organizers of the convention for giving me this platform really to just, I guess, speak about myself and my journey, and it really does feel like an honor and a privilege to be sitting in the same seats where phenomenal and inspiring women were sitting here this morning. Such big shoes to fill. And it's an honor, actually, to be sitting next to Charlotte. I was part of her journey, and she was part of my journey during our careers. And there was a time when we were both crying because our PhDs were so difficult, and we were comforting each other, you know. So it's such an honor to be sitting next to her today, for the both of us to be telling our journeys, and for the both of us to be able to be doing, I can safely say, so well in our careers, right? Now, but before I tell you a bit about myself, last week, actually, I was on a public platform talking about the work that I do, and it was on the morning news, and my son actually got to see it, right? And apparently he was waving and greeting, and I wasn't greeting back. So when I got home, there was actually a family meeting where I was told, when I greet, you greet back. So just in case someone is live streaming this for him. Hello, Lelite. And hello to Lelite's little brother, Lito. So those are my two sons, because I'm a mother, a very recent mother. So I'm a senior researcher with the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. And I work on, so normally when people ask me, what is it that you do? I say I'm developing drug treatments that are suitable to the needs of Africans, and I'm trying to make them affordable so that Africans can access them. So that's the nutshell of what I try to do. I've previously worked with infectious diseases, which are called communicable diseases, and now I work in communicable diseases. And we'll talk about that, you know, later. But so how the journey has been for me is that I also started my research career as a intern at the CSIR, just like Charlotte. See? And actually, my first job, I was interviewed by the now current CEO of SAPRA, and she was actually the one that called me up to say, can you please sit on this panel? So, you know, everything just goes around in a wheel. And I was born in Attridgeville, which is a township west of Pretoria in South Africa. I was raised by my grandmother. Had a humble childhood, like most kids that are raised in the township, where you don't even get to see, you know, what heights a person can go to and achieve, you know, as to going up to become a researcher who can make an impact in your society, having 2 PhDs. So fast forward to, I did undergraduate at the Tshwane University of Technology in analytical chemistry. I did a master's in chemical sciences at the same university, and then I got into a dual PhD program where I got to do a PhD in chemical sciences and a PhD in pharmaceutical sciences in 2 different institutions in 2 different countries. And people always ask me about the journey, and like, I mean, 1 PhD is enough. Why would you be 2? And I actually agree, 1 PhD is really enough. So the thing is that fast forward to now, where I use both of these PhDs in the work that I do. So I'm able to be able to develop formulations for drug treatments. And at the same time, I'm able to know what or sort of predict the behavior that these drug formulations can have in the body. So I'm sort of, and I also have a background in analytical chemistry, so I can also actually characterize the formulations that I make. So I'm part of the whole value chain in drug treatments. But really just, it's good for me to understand, but I can say that really even not with having the whole background in the value chain, it is possible for someone to work in the kind of job that I do, because really to make a treatment get to a point where it is at the bedside of a patient, we need a couple of researchers. I'm just privileged in a way that I've been able to have that kind of academic background in terms of knowing the full value chain of pharmaceutics. And I've worked as a fellow at Novartis Pharmaceuticals in Switzerland. And so I'm able to understand what commercialization of drugs is like, and that really helps in my journey. So I think from the time I was an intern at the CSIR, I've always been looking at, this is the job that I want to do. I want to develop drug treatments, and what do I have to do to get to a place where this is my niche area, to get to a place where when I work on something, on a drug treatment, I know what it takes for it to be able to actually get to the patient. So that's sort of how I've tailored my journey into what I want to do as a researcher. And I'm a mother to two young kids. I highly, well, it happens often, but I highly would not recommend getting pregnant one after the other, because my kids are like a few months apart, and it's really not easy at all. But it's also something I take a pride in, because, I mean, they are the reason why I do a lot of what I do. I want to leave the world a better place because of them. And in everything that I do and in everything that I'm trying to make impact in the world is because there are people that I've actually brought into this earth, and I need to leave it a better place.
But Abila, it's interesting. Well, let's first give her a round of applause. Interesting when I listen to you ladies, and I just think about the types of solutions we need in the world, right? I'm listening to you talk about end-to-end, from research to commercial to in the products, in the patient's hands, right? There's such a gap there, because the researchers know what they know, and they know why they're doing certain things. The commercial guys don't understand necessarily everything that's happening on the ground in terms of research and development. And I just think that this gap, it's a real niche, and I think, you know, good on you. We will watch this space. So, ladies, I want to know, can I just check at the back? We still haven't got the third panelist? Okay. It's unfortunate, eh? So I think maybe I can just ask you then. I think we've touched on some of the personal, some of the highlights, etc. Have there been challenges? There must have been challenges, and maybe you can just share one or two. I mean, I could write a book, so I'm assuming that there have been challenges. Maybe you just want to, you know, Charlotte, one or two challenges. And the reason why this is important is for everybody to know, right? Aspiring women in science, in technology, aspiring young leaders. I think it's important to realize that there's this shared pain, and also that those of us who have come through it want to help make it better for those that are coming, right? So maybe just something, thought?
Sure. So two things specifically come to mind. The first one is there was a young lady in one of yesterday's sessions who is a university student, a master's student, I believe, who raised the issue of lack of support by senior female scientists in her area. So I've experienced something similar from two different versions of that. So the first one, I was about to begin my BSc honors. This was supposed to be at the University of Pretoria, where I did my undergrad. And so I got into 3 honors programs, and then I chose the one that I thought was most suitable at the time. And when I sat down with the lady who would be my supervisor to plan out certain things, her approach was to make me a clone of herself without any consideration for what I wanted, whether I wanted to be in academia or industry or interface between the two or anything of the sort. So she said to me, if you're not going to be with me for your honors, your master's, and your PhD, and beyond, then I don't want to work with you. So this was February already. Registrations are closed everywhere, all of that, but I had to make a plan. So I went to vets, and I spoke to different departments, and fortunately, the Department of Anatomical Sciences at the time was amenable to having a chat and register me late February. So I got a supervisor, and that's when I did my BSc honors in medical cell biology. So that was a hurdle earlier on. And then fast forward, PhD in Cambridge, there was a lady in my field whom I looked up to, especially as a woman of color who had overcome challenges. She grew up in India, trained in the US, all of that, then was recruited to Cambridge. So I thought, okay, this is an inspirational figure. I'm going to get to know her because we were in the same institute, and I'll hook up with her, and I'll gain all the knowledge that I need from her. But she was more focused on criticizing and settling scores with my supervisor. So it was a competition between the supervisors, and I was caught in the midst of that. So that hampered my ability to gain the knowledge and the expertise from her that I could have gleaned from. But unfortunately, with this particular person, it was very clear that she couldn't, for some reason, work with women. So the women that were part of her group wouldn't last. They would leave rather quickly, and she apparently worked better with men, which is quite unfortunate. But this reminds me of what the panelists said yesterday about sometimes women go through certain traumas, right? It's such a traumatic path to the height of their career, such that they become hardened themselves, and they're not able to relate to other women in a way that is productive and supportive. So that was one of the unfortunate ones. So present day, one of the challenges for me that is quite restrictive and very limiting, but we're pushing through, so it causes unnecessary delays. So working for a state-owned entity has some challenges. For example, you're in a system that is not as enabling as it could be. What am I talking about? So limited funding for projects and innovations that could be transformative. They bring you in to establish a certain platform, but then when you say this is my budget, because I know what it's going to take to get here, they give you 10% of what you asked for. so then you're going to need infrastructure, you're going to need a team, but what's 10% of what you ask for going to do for you? So that was a major challenge. The other thing that is the bane of my existence currently is the procurement system in the state-owned entities. So the whole, you have to ask for 3 codes, or if something is above 30 grand, then you have to have all sorts of motivations and different levels of approval, and that takes anything from 2 months up to 6 months. So that is quite challenging, but we are currently engaging with the finance to try and renegotiate a way to get around these things, because my counterpart in Cambridge or somewhere in Europe will think of an idea, decide on the reagent to buy, they order it, the next day it's here, they start doing their experiments, they move. Within 6 months, the 6 months that I'm waiting for approvals and things, they've already decided whether the reagent is working or not, and whether this path is the way to pursue, or should we pivot to something else. So those are some of my current frustrations and challenges.
So interesting. Now, I will just not try and play agony aunt and answer any of this. I'm here to just facilitate the discussion. However, I will say one thing. I'll say that, well, let me say 2 things, please. So I'll say that I think with regards to the first piece, that's why sessions such as these are so important, because I don't think that oftentimes the women not supporting other women is intentional. I think that things are happening, and I think that, as you say, sometimes there was a battle to get to where they are. And so instead of thinking, I'm going to try and make it easier for the next one, they're thinking, well, then you also go your rite of passage, right? So I think sometimes when we profile these discussions, I think it raises the level of discourse in these critical areas. And so it's useful to have these challenges aired, right? The second thing I'll just tell you, Charlotte, is being in an area with limited resources or being in a place where things are a little bit difficult sometimes, hello, hi. So sometimes gives you the opportunity to grow and stretch and build resilience. And I think that that's what's going to take you from here to the next step. But let's go over to you, Batabile, because it wasn't about me answering, it's just for me listening.
Yeah, that's great. I think for me, one of the biggest challenges that I have right now is probably something that's not, well, that didn't start off as personal, but just did become personal. It's really the limitation that we put on ourselves, firstly as a continent and then as a country in terms of the research that we are able to do or that we think we can do. And I listened to one of the esteemed professors that was giving a talk this morning, Professor Zordo Glamini, who was talking about the work that she does in cancer, right? And how difficult it has been for her to start this research institute, and that even up to today, whenever students approach her and ask to be part of a team, she cannot take them on because there is no funding for such. And that's the issue of communicable versus non-communicable diseases in South Africa and in Africa, where we think we need to do research on infectious diseases because that is what we are known for as a country, right? So when I came back from studying and I came into South Africa, the work that I wanted to do was in non-communicable diseases. I wanted to work in cancer. Fast forward to today, I work on both diabetes and breast cancer. But really, what happened when I did that was that everyone that I would share my ideas with it would be so much easier, especially for you as a young researcher, black female, and having to ask, because really, when we do research, we have to ask people for money, right? Correct. And having to write proposals, having to compete for grants, they would say it would be so much easier if you just focused on infectious diseases, right? But in actual fact, I did. So the first proposal that I really wrote, the first big proposal that I wrote, I think it was to the WHO with my team, as someone with a PhD, so post-PhD, was for malaria, because that's what I was told. But I'm really fortunate that I fought, and fast forward to today, I'm doing research in diabetes and breast cancer. And I won't lie, I do not have as much funding as I would like to have. But I'm grateful to women like Professor Zordo, because I work with her a lot. And, you know, she has said to me, you know what, the little money that I have, we will share. Because she understands how hard it is for me to find funding, even though she feels that the work that I do is important. And I've had other people who feel the work is important. Some people will even tell me that they feel the work is important, but they just cannot give me the money because they want to give the money to people who are doing infectious diseases. And just to give you an idea of why it is important for us to do the work that we have to do. I mean, in South Africa, women who have breast cancer, the 3-year survival rate is 50%. In the USA, it's 90%. In South Africa, 50% of the people who need insulin don't get it because it's either unaffordable for the municipality in which they live, because it could be that the people in Gauteng, 90% of the patients get it, but the people in Eastern Cape, only about 30 or 40% get it. Also, there's logistics involved. So there's a whole lot of things involved into why people don't have access to treatment, right? This year alone, when I was looking at the stats, because I work in diabetes and I look at the stats alone a lot, by June, diabetes had killed about 90,000 people. So if I want to tell you what 90,000 people looks like, that's how many people would fill Soccer City Stadium, the largest football stadium in South Africa. But when we do locate resources towards funding, we say we cannot allocate money towards these two diseases that I've talked to you about. So I think those are the challenges that I've been encountering recently in terms of the research that I'm trying to do.
It's
in
interesting
a nutshell.
because, I mean, quite personally, I think that this is going to be the biggest focus area going forward for Africa in terms of cancer and diabetes, right? So I think that you've got the experience in infectious diseases, which gave you the profile to now make a difference in the areas that are going to become. So very, very cool. We've got our colleague, Vimba. Hello, how are you? You're on mute, I think, Vimba. Still on mute. So while she joins, she hails from Zimbabwe and is a lecturer at the University of Zimbabwe and is also busy starting a biotech company. And now we've lost her. So let's continue while we wait for her to join again. I think whilst we've discussed some of the challenges, like I said earlier, it's important to profile and so people can hear the types of challenges we face, right?
Yes.
Not just as women, but as aspiring leaders, etc. But let's take a second to flip the coin and tell me about who's been a champion of your journey? I always love this question when I get it sometimes, because for me personally, you know, the role of a mentor and a sponsor is a very different thing.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about the sponsor, the one who advocates for you, who jumps up and down in the boardroom without you even knowing, that person that says, pick Batabile, pick Charlotte. So maybe you want to tell us, and then we'll go over to Vimba and take her whole story also. Yeah?
Hello.
Okay, thanks.
Am I in now? Sorry.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
All
you.
right.
Can we just jump
All
to
right.
her
I was
quickly?
worried.
Yes, of course.
So,
Yeah, selecting the microphones.
no, great to have you, Vimba. Maybe you just want to take the panel and also the audience through your journey, your story. I've just told them that you're a lecturer at the University of Zimbabwe and you also are busy in partnership founding a biotech company. But maybe you can just tell us a little bit about your journey and some of your highlights and achievements.
Thanks for that. Not sure exactly where to start from, but just a bit of a background about myself. I was a student at the University of Zimbabwe. That's from around 2004 to 2007. And then I moved to Japan. That's where I went to do my postgraduate studies. And basically from around 2009 to about 2015, I also did my postdoc studies there. I moved to work for about 2 years in Romania as a researcher. They were largely working on gerontomics work. So I spent a bit of time there. Then I moved back home. Like any young, ambitious scientist, I wanted, as could be expected, I've been trying to start a biotech company with special focus on enzymes because I feel like, they have got a wide range of application. But you know how it is, it's moving back home and as would be expected, it's trying to start a company. So there are major challenges that you kind of come across. Obviously, just the registration processes sometimes can be very cumbersome. And then obviously trying to convince people because when you're looking at the particular field of interest that I have, the challenge is to kind of partner with already existing companies because, by and large, you want to make something that has some kind of application or something that somebody wants, especially if you're starting off because, sometimes you need the quick returns. So to kind of like keep the projects running as well as just the business afloat. Yeah, I think that's probably in a nutshell.
Thanks, and you've also touched on one of the questions we did talk to in terms of challenges. So thanks for that, Vimba. We're actually now just talking to, the fact that it has been useful for me personally, and I know for a lot of my friends and colleagues, when you happen to somewhat inorganically stumble across a sponsor, because, and I'd like to profile the role of sponsors. And maybe, the ladies can just share with us if you've had a champion of your journey, and sometimes it's more than one.
Yeah, it's a lot. I'm really going to get in trouble with this answer because I'm going to forget someone. But yeah, I've had a lot of sponsors, both men and women. And I think the reason why I'm mentioning men is that if we want to empower women, we need to have men being allies in what we are trying to do in terms of promoting women in science and innovation, right? But I've mentioned Dr. Boitumelo Semete, who I said that the very first job interview that I had, I'm going to give away my age, 15 years ago. I had my first interview as an intern, and she was one of the people that interviewed me. And it's in the way that she advocated for me to be a part of the CSIR, and I'm so glad that I did not disappoint her. Because imagine if she advocated for me and you know, things didn't go the way that it had planned. It's important because you know, when you're trying to actually promote women and then you find that you know, they're not meeting up to, and I'm not even gonna say your expectations, but their own expectations, because I believe it's very important for me to meet my own expectations more than anybody else. I think so, yeah. So, and I've just mentioned that when I started work on breast cancer, I was able to reach out to Professor Zordo Glamini, who was very happy to hear about my work. In fact, I think that day she was more excited to meet me than I was to meet her, and I was so amazed as to why would this woman be, because I guess she was excited to see a young woman who was willing to take the risk of working in that. And for me, really, it has been a great journey of having allies, and that's why I'm saying that. Are you going to get me in trouble because I might leave out a few? And then there's a professor who's currently stationed at the Northwest University. Her name is Professor Lebusiru. My journey, and I've mentioned this before, is that I like to be involved in the value chain of science and innovation. And I also want to work a lot with academia. I do a lot of work also with the government as well. So in the work that I like to do with academia, she's the one person who's always championing for me in terms of what can I do to help you? What are the skills that you need? What help do you need in order for you to, even though you're not working full-time in the academic space, but at least have a little bit of insight, have a foot in the door in terms of academia, and that's what she has done for me. I've had a lot of women at DSI who have also been sponsorships. There's a lady in Tombi who works with international relations with DSI, and when I said to her, I really want to see how we can do human capacity development in South Africa and have a lot of young girls or female students or even male students in South Africa who can get the kind of opportunity that I've had to be able to study overseas and eventually come back to South Africa, and even if it's not for a whole PhD, but just for some time. She said, yes, come to my office, let's make it happen. So it's really great to be able to have ideas in your head, sometimes not even know how to conceptualize them, but have people who say, let's sit down, let's talk about how we can make it work. And they've been, I mean, at the CSIR, I can't even mention them all, but I'm so grateful that every time I sit with someone and have a conversation with them on what I want to do. I mean, like I said, I've had a lot of challenges with people like, you know, saying, no, this you should not do. But I've had more yeses than nos, in fact, in terms of sponsoring the career that I want to have. I know that some of the things that I want to do are not conventional in terms of why would you want to be involved in government? You're a researcher. Why do you want to be involved in diplomacy? But I'm grateful that people do allow me to be involved in all of that. I'll actually have the privilege to sit in one of the sessions about diplomacy tomorrow. So I'm quite grateful that people are open to the ideas that I want to have and are willing to mentor me and sponsor me to be the person that I want to be. And I guess the message that I'm trying to send is that maybe the young people of today do not want to be the conventional researchers that I could say we were, because I've been a researcher for some time now. And we should just be open to the ideas that they have in terms of what they believe a researcher should be.
Great. In other words, what you're saying is you're going to be that ally too.
Definitely, all the way, all the way.
Charlotte?
So yeah, I share the same sentiments about getting me in trouble, because there's so many people to acknowledge in this particular area.
Which is good.
So for me, I mean, I'll start at the, well, I like to start
I feel like I'm going to get you guys into trouble.
I like to start way, way back, but no. Okay, so fortunately for me, growing up in Mtlalatwane, like I said, a lot of people didn't believe in what I was trying to do, but in high school, I had a school principal, Mr. Makunyan, who would use his own car to take me to debating competitions, to science innovation competitions, and so on. So when the Department of Education at the time had very little budget funneled towards us, so that's somebody that
For sure.
that really was a champion in my journey. And years later, when I started my my NGO, which advocates for education improvement and information and skills sharing for rural youth, he's been an advocate for that, has been a supporter, and will recruit teachers and will help us organize tutoring workshops in the winter and so on, even though he's retired. So that's a real champion in my life. When I got to the CSR, I met Dr. Lionel Gresh, and I didn't have any experience in molecular biology at the time. He took me under his wing, taught me the ropes, and then he was confident enough to let me do my thing. And he had this phrase where whenever we would discuss a plan and I would tell him the progress and this is where we are and this is where I'd like to go, my favorite phrase of his was, "As you wish." So that gave me the confidence and allowed me the space to be creative and innovative in my own way and feel like I own this space and I can contribute in some shape or form. So that was a really big one. And Dr. Makobetsa Khati, he's the one who gave me my break into the CSR. So he interviewed me for my internship. And beyond that, he would always take us to stakeholder engagements.
Exposure.
So when we're meeting with TIA, would be in those meetings or DSI. So we'd get an opportunity to, one, hear what the conversation in the room is about, get an idea of where we might contribute, and also get an opportunity to shine. So that was really important. And he would also then trust us to speak on his behalf in national or international meetings because he had seen our journeys and supported us in that way. Then my PhD, my PhD supervisor, Professor Andres Floto. So he took me on as a PhD student, saw the potential, nurtured it, and then advocated for me to run, while doing my PhD, so as part of my PhD, to run a multinational, multi-site research project. He's in the background while I'm taking the lead and coordinating research activities across the world. So that was really incredible. And then in the background, he's saying to everyone who will listen, this is an impressive young woman, this is a star.
That is the exact example of sponsorship, right? Very, very cool.
And then after, just one more.
How many more?
Well, actually two more, so quickly, sorry. So after that, the CEO of Hutano Diagnostics, when he recruited me, he came from Oxford, met with me in Cambridge, and said, Charlotte, okay, so this is what we need from you as a company. What do you want? So that I can take it to my board.
Love it.
And so I was able to lay out my desires, so a Christmas wish list, and he took it to his board, and he really went to battle for me because they didn't know me from anywhere. But he was like, okay, this is the person that we need because of 1, 2, 3, and these are the things that she needs to be able to be comfortable and to align with her future plans because she's not going to end up here, she's coming through, but we will use her skills while she's with us, and we need to give her something in return.
Exactly.
So that was a big one. In present day, Professor Lakis Kwibilu at MedTech.
You can't mention everyone you know.
I know, this is the last one. This is the last one. So he was basically taking me under his wing at MedTech, showing me the lay of the land, and also advocating for my getting opportunities or getting a seat in certain tables, decision-making tables. So that's really important.
So basically, I mean, it's a pretty strong statement for all of us listening to be these sponsors, right? To find these people and really just profile, advocate, jump, and be the person that gives them the exposure that they wouldn't have had otherwise, right? Vimbai?
Okay, my list is not as long.
Okay,
but
go
basically, yeah. On my part, I think of note is Dr. Makumbura Nyoni. He's like the R&D manager at NBA, which is like the chief regulator of biotechnology in Zimbabwe. I largely appraise him because, like, when I kind of came back, you know, they had established a product development unit. So just bringing me into that unit kind of allowed me to get a lot of exposure in terms of like actually developing a product, like from the whole point of conception up until you finally have it on the shelves. And I think that has been kind of very helpful on my part, because that's kind of like the thing I'm trying to work on, like, you know, develop a product and finally have it basically in the shops. So in that particular respect, I think he was very helpful. And then also Professor Brighton Samatanga, he's like, well, he's basically a professor in Zurich, but he recently opened, 2 years ago, he opened a biotech company in Zimbabwe. So again, he's been like very influential in just kind of like helping you to get to know how to kind of establish a company here, what you need, the financial aspect part of it, the regulatory aspect part of it, and just basically how you can go around trying to fundraise or raise money to kind of push the project ahead. So I think these two individuals have been like the most notable on my side.
Excellent. Thanks, Vimbai. Thanks for sharing. So I think I want to ask, okay, so let me pull this back a little bit. We're going to head towards closing, maybe just two more quick questions. The one, you know, this morning I was having my morning coffee and looking through LinkedIn, as I do, and then I send off to various people what I think is relevant. So this morning I saw the UNICEF saying, unbelievable, they said, although women and girls make up more than half the global population, it will take another 99.5 years for equal laws and rights. Now, I don't know where the 0.5 came, but let's say 100 years, right? This is astounding. It's absolutely astounding that we're still talking about not one country in the world has equal rights for women, right? So you look at that statistic. Then you look at the World Economic Forum 2022. There was a piece of information that was floating out saying only 15% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women. Then you look at South Africa, JSE, I think less than 10%. There were the four that we all knew, and less than 10% are women. So what is your advice, one piece of advice that you would give to organizations that can accelerate the progress of women to the C-suite?
Yeah, you're really trying to get us in trouble today, right? Because I'm thinking my boss is here,
It's
my
pointed
boss is here, my
ladies.
boss is here. And the first thing that happens to my mind automatically when you ask that question is I'm now trying to tally the numbers in terms of the organization I work in.
Correct.
And trying to see, I mean, how many women leaders in executive are there, and the numbers are not coming together, and I'm like, why is Farah asking me this? But you know, in South Africa, I think we often want to come up with complicated, you know, answers to these things because we think they are complex problems, but they really aren't. And I want to say we are at a privilege in the country because we have this 5-year term that I think is quite popular in a lot of organizations, right? So you know that if an executive is going to be there for 5 years, if he does really well or if she does really well, I'm going to say he because we know a lot of them are he's. If he does really well, then he gets another 5 years. So that's 10 years. So you literally have 10 years if you want the next one to be a woman, to actually make sure that the next one is a woman by giving them the right training, by having conversations with the women, because you can actually see the talent that is there. You are there every day, you can see the talent, and you can pick and say, this one is the talent, that one. You don't even have to pick one, you pick a few, and then you take them through the process of developing them into what you think would be the right leader for the organization. And you actually also have conversations with them around where they would take, you know, the organization if they were to become leaders. So really, 10 years, really? And we can't come up with a woman? Really?
I don't know about this story, because I want you to go back and think about this. You can mail me later, but it's important. Do you not find, or maybe you don't find, but I find that it requires deliberate action for acceleration. And sometimes we want to follow the process that you said. Even then it doesn't work, right? So you're saying, okay, 10 years, let's find the people, let's put them on a development plan, etc. I'm saying if you find the right smart people, and they are there, so you find them, how do you make 10 years, 3 years? So what do you need to do, and how do you need to change it, right? So I hear you, but...
Yeah, but I know this is not a question and answer and such, but the reason why I spoke of the 10 years is because you have to look at the statistics as they are, right?
Yeah, you talk about the listed companies
and you have to say that if an executive is sitting on the position now, there's no way you're going to say in 3 years, go away, we're putting a woman. That is unfair.
Well...
But you know that this person is going to be away in 5 years.
Right?
Yeah, so that's what I'm talking about, lining up the women, because we know that we're not going to automatically wake up this morning and just say, because we want women empowerment, all of you men out. That's not how things work, even though we can dream up a world like that in our heads, but we know that's not how it works. So I'm saying we really don't have excuses, because we look at the numbers now and we make a decision now that we're going to pull out the talent, and we know we have 5 to 10 years to do it.
Okay, let's leave the 5 to 10, but let's go to Charlotte.
No, but so, I mean, echoing Batabile again. So here's the thing: like you were saying, it's not really that complicated of a problem. I absolutely agree with you on the accelerated plan, because I'm also kind of a beneficiary of such. So it's in shortening, basically combining the two thoughts, right? For me, it's career progression planning right from the outset. So as certain women come in, you map out where they would like to go and what it takes to get there. Then get them on a training program, leadership program, and then also take them along with you in experiential learning to be in environments where they have to exercise their leadership muscle.
Love it, and it's deliberate.
It is deliberate. So, yeah, so for me, I mean, I think Batabile would probably be in the same position as well. So I'm in a position where I didn't take the traditional, you do PhD, then postdoc, and then a 5-year postdoc, and then you become a senior scientist, a principal. Then I moved from postdoc to consulting principal scientist to now chief scientist. So it's the 10 years condensed into 3.
Yeah, well, I'm not in that position. My boss is here, and he's listening, so that's a good one, that you say I should, no, thanks a lot,
Vimbai, over to you to share some advice you would have to organizations.
You know what? I'm gonna be the bad apple. I don't have any advice for the organizations, but my advice is to the people who have money, the funds, the banks, the billionaires. I just think that if you want to see more women CEOs, more women in business and in positions, it'll be just good if they could just avail more funding for women's projects. I think if they do that, you will accelerate ourselves to those positions.
The panel is loving it. Yeah. Okay, thanks. I see Batabile nodding quite vigorously.
This is a question I guess I'll pose to everyone, audience included, and we don't have to answer it right now, but earlier in the sessions, they talked about profiling the girl child as a girl child, not just a child. So I'm wondering if in this space of leadership then, do we have certain measures in place where we support women, because a woman walks a different journey from a man.
She absolutely does.
Do we tailor it in such a way that it is supportive to women in a particular way? Do we have such such measures in place? Can we develop such measures if we don't have them? So I'll leave
I
that.
do not have the answer, but I think we'll leave that to people to think about. But it's interesting because I find in a lot of these, you know, when you get to 20 years experience, you now have experience to fall back on, right? And you start thinking about things. And I feel like a lot of it is just a lack of commitment and being deliberate, right? Like even these, we'll want to have sort of policies where we talk specifically to women because women have different circumstances. They are the bedrock of their communities. When a woman is at work, she's also thinking about 15 other things. A woman is different, right? But what we find is we don't want to specify that because then we are differentiating and should be equal. So then we don't fully commit. We just sort of stumble along. And so I think you have a valid point, but let's leave that to the policymakers and the excos, and I'll take it to my exco. But, yeah, you want to say?
No.
Oh, okay.
I was agreeing. Yeah.
So I'm going to close now, and I'm going to ask you to give some advice to your 20 to 25-year-old self. You know what you know now, and you back there, now it might not be that far back, I hear you.
Very far.
But,
It is far.
but entering the workplace, right, just one thing that you wish you knew?
So for me, I would tell my 20-something-year-old self, be open and flexible.
Amen.
So, and not be rigidly married to a specific plan because it all works out in the end. So just
Love it.
breathe, relax, and enjoy the journey.
Honestly, I tell myself the same thing. I love that. But Tabile?
Yeah, I think probably almost the same to what Charlotte had said. I think I would probably say relax because you'll always be a work in progress that will never be finished. So just be open to learning, unlearning, relearning. There's so many things that I learned along my journey that I realized in order to relearn new things, I had to unlearn the things that I had learned to open up myself to new opportunities.
You guys are too wise for your age. Great. Then by your advice to your 20 to 25-year-old self, what do you wish you knew back then?
Well, you know, as scientists, we tend to focus a lot on science. But looking back, I think a little bit of financial management knowledge would have helped. So yeah, that's the advice I would probably give myself. Yeah, just a bit more financial management knowledge. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think, let's check the time. What is the time? On the dot, 1 hour. Lovely. So I think, if I could just, reflect on the time that you guys took to come here and share your journey, obviously with the aim of profiling. For us, we're doing it to profile you and your journey and your achievements, right? But for you, you're also doing it to inspire other young women in science and other aspiring leaders. So I think, if you look across, I mentioned earlier, we're talking about Oxford, Cambridge, Tokyo. That other one was what? Vimbai? Okinawa. I think it came up in
Okinawa.
The TV show, right?
Yeah.
Okinawa. These ladies have gone out, they've come back with a passion for Africa to make a difference. And I think, I'd like you to just join me in thanking them for participating today. And then just to Bio and the conference organizers, just for giving us an opportunity to have this discussion. It's a very strong theme about women in science this time, right? Every day we have different plenaries. They're well attended. We've got panelists that have all joined, facilitators. So just to Bio and the conference, a great big thank you from us. And I think, I just wanted to make sure I made a note here to just my advice to young women, aspiring leaders, future women in science, is just to continue to dream big. Have those big dreams, be agile and open and flexible to change, but also to connect and be inspired with all the other women in your community and around you, right? Because I think that when we do that together, we can achieve all that's possible. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, and bye.
Bye-bye.
Right, I think that's it.